Imagine a toddler, just 19 months old, standing at her school bus stop with a bright smile, clutching her small backpack. She's waiting for a familiar face, a relative she knows and trusts, someone who is supposed to keep her safe. The bus doors open, she steps off, and a hand reaches out to guide her home. But that walk home never happened. CCTV cameras captured her getting off that bus, but they never saw her again. This isn't just a story about a missing child. It's a story about a massive failure of trust, a mystery that has left the streets of New York City echoing with a mother's screams for justice. Welcome to the Crime Chapter, where today, we are diving deep into the heart-wrenching and confusing disappearance of Ziyah Harris, a case where the people meant to protect her are the very ones at the center of a storm of questions. Before we get into the dark details of what happened that May afternoon, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring stories like Ziyah's to light, and it ensures that these victims are never forgotten. Now, let's look at the day a young life vanished into thin air. In May 2022, life for most people in New York was moving at its usual frantic pace. But for the family of Ziyah Harris, time was about to stand still. Ziyah was a bubbly, energetic 19-month-old girl. She had her whole life ahead of her, but her living situation was complicated. At the time of her disappearance, she wasn't living with her biological mother. Instead, she was in the custody of a family member, a person the state and the family believed would provide a stable environment. This is where the story begins to take a turn into the unknown. On May 18th, Ziyah was seen getting off her school bus near her home in Brooklyn. This is a crucial detail because it's the last time she was seen by anyone outside of her immediate circle. The bus driver saw her, the camera saw her, and she was handed over to her guardian. Everything seemed normal. But as the sun went down that evening, the nightmare began. Days passed, and then weeks. Incredibly, Ziyah wasn't reported missing immediately. Imagine that for a second. A toddler is gone, and the people responsible for her care aren't calling the police. It wasn't until weeks later that the authorities were finally alerted that something was terribly wrong. When the New York Police Department finally got the call, they hit the ground running. But they were already behind. The trail was getting cold. They started where anyone would. The last place she was seen. They checked the CCTV footage again. There she was, getting off the bus at 1:30 p.m. But when they tried to trace her path from that bus stop to the apartment, the trail just stopped. It was as if she had walked into a shadow and never walked out. The investigation quickly turned toward the people closest to her. If a child disappears while in the care of a guardian, that guardian is naturally the first person the police want to talk to. However, reports from the investigation suggest that the cooperation wasn't exactly what you'd expect from someone whose child is missing. There were conflicting stories and gaps in the timeline that didn't make sense. Police began searching the apartment, looking for any sign of a struggle, any clue that might tell them where Ziyah went. They even went as far as searching local parks and searching through trash, desperate for a discarded toy or a piece of clothing. The community in Brooklyn was on edge. How does a child disappear in one of the most surveilled cities in the world? The search expanded to ponds and wooded areas. Divers were sent into the water in local parks, searching through the murky depths while Ziyah's mother stood on the shore, heartbroken and desperate for answers. It's a sight that no parent should ever have to endure, watching police divers look for your baby in a lake. As the news hit the headlines, the public started asking the same questions the police were. Who was this relative? Why did it take so long to report her missing? And most importantly, where is Ziyah? The mystery only grew deeper when police revealed that they were investigating the case not just as a missing person, but with a level of suspicion that pointed toward foul play. As we look at the evidence, or lack thereof, you start to see a pattern of silence. In cases like this, silence is often the loudest thing in the room. The detectives working this case for the NYPD have been tight-lipped, but the frustration is visible. They have spent thousands of man-hours looking for this little girl. They've gone door to door, interviewed hundreds of people, and analyzed countless hours of video. Yet, here we are, years later, and the cradle is still empty. It makes you wonder, in a world where we are all connected, how can someone so small just be erased? I want to pause here for a second and ask you guys a question. When you hear about a case where a child goes missing under the care of a guardian, what is your first instinct? Do you think it's a failure of the system that placed her there, or is it something more sinister within the home? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We really want to hear your perspective because your engagement helps keep this story active in the algorithm, and that's how we get more eyes on Ziyah's face. Please, share this video on your social media as well. Someone out there might know something, even a small detail that they think is unimportant, that could blow this case wide open. As the investigation moved into the summer of 2022, the pressure on the Guardian reached a boiling point. Protests were held outside the apartment building. People held signs with Ziyah's face, demanding that the trusted relative tell the truth. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable. The biological mother, who had been fighting her own battles, was now thrust into a spotlight she never wanted, pleading for the return of her daughter. She spoke to the media, her voice trembling, saying she just wanted to know if her baby was safe. But the silence from the other side was deafening. No one was coming forward with the truth. The police began to look closer at the history of the household. Was there a history of neglect? Were there signs that something was wrong before that fateful day in May? Every lead they followed seemed to bring them back to the same dead end. It was a circle of questions with no exit. The more the police dug, the more they realized that the trusted person in Ziyah's life might have been the very person she should have been protected from. This is the tragic irony of so many of these cases we cover here on the Crime Chapter. The places that should be sanctuaries often become the site of the greatest tragedies. As the investigation into Ziyah's disappearance deepened, the focus sharpened on the inner workings of the household. It wasn't just about a missing child anymore. It was about the stories that weren't adding up. Detectives began to look at the timeline between the moment she stepped off that bus and the weeks that passed before anyone reported her gone. In the world of criminal investigation, those first 48 hours are everything. When you lose weeks, you lose the ability to track digital footprints, you lose fresh witness memories, and most importantly, you lose the chance to find a child while the trail is still hot. The question kept coming back to the same point. Why the silence? For any parent or guardian, a child being out of sight for even 5 minutes causes a panic that is hard to describe. But here, the clock kept ticking for days on end, while life seemingly went on as normal inside that Brooklyn apartment. It's the kind of detail that makes your skin crawl, and it's why so many of you in the Crime Chapter community have been following this case with such intensity. The NYPD's forensic teams eventually moved into the apartment with a level of detail that showed they were looking for more than just clues. They were looking for a crime scene. They used luminol to check for hidden traces of blood, they dismantled furniture, and they went through every electronic device in the home. They were looking for a search history, a text message, or a photo, anything that could explain what happened to Ziyah after the cameras stopped watching her. But the results were frustratingly quiet. It was as if she had been scrubbed from existence. This is one of the most haunting aspects of the Ziyah Harris case. Usually, in a city as crowded as New York, someone sees something. A neighbor hears a cry, a delivery driver catches a glimpse through a window, or a trash collector notices something out of place. But in this case, there was nothing but a wall of silence that seemed to get higher every single day. While the police were hitting dead ends, the public's anger began to shift toward the Administration for Children's Services, or ACS. People wanted to know how a child who was already in the system could just vanish without a red flag being raised immediately. How many people were supposed to be checking in on her? When a child is placed in the custody of a relative, there are supposed to be safety nets. But for Ziyah, every one of those nets seemed to have a hole in it. This failure of the system added another layer of tragedy to the story. It wasn't just a potential crime committed by an individual. It was a collective failure to protect one of the most vulnerable members of society. This case really makes you stop and think about how many other children might be in similar situations right now, hidden behind closed doors while the world assumes they are safe. Before we move into the latest updates and the reward offered for information, I want to take a quick second to ask for your help. If you find this deep dive into Ziyah's story important, please share this video right now. Hit that share button and send it to a friend or post it on your Facebook or Twitter. The more people who see her face and hear her name, the harder it is for the truth to stay hidden. Also, if you haven't already, drop a comment below. Even if it's just a word of support for her biological mother, every comment helps the YouTube algorithm show this video to more people. We need to keep the pressure on and make sure Ziyah's name stays in the headlines. Your engagement is the only way we can ensure this case doesn't become just another cold file in a drawer. As 2022 turned into 2023, the NYPD announced a significant reward, thousands of dollars, for any information leading to the discovery of Ziyah or the arrest of those involved. They were hoping that money would do what a conscience couldn't, break the silence. But even with the promise of a life-changing amount of money, no one came forward with the smoking gun piece of evidence. The search expanded to different states, following tips that she might have been moved out of New York, but each lead turned out to be a dead end. The biological mother, standing strong despite her world being shattered, continued to hold vigils. She spoke about Ziyah's favorite toys, her laugh, and the way she used to look at the world with so much curiosity. It was a reminder to everyone that this wasn't just a case or a file. It was a little girl who deserved to grow up. The mystery of Ziyah Harris is a dark reminder of how fragile trust can be. We trust the bus driver to drop the child off, we trust the system to vet the guardians, and we trust family to be a sanctuary. When all three of those things fail, we are left with a void that can never truly be filled. As of today, the case remains open. The NYPD hasn't given up, and neither has the community. There are still detectives who wake up every morning thinking about that 19-month-old girl who stepped off a bus and never came home. They know that someone out there knows exactly what happened. They know that secrets have a way of leaking out over time, and they are waiting for that one person to finally feel the weight of their silence and decide to speak. As we wrap up this look into one of New York's most heartbreaking mysteries, we have to ask ourselves, what does justice look like for a child like Ziyah? Is it just about finding out what happened, or is it about changing the system so this never happens again? The Crime Chapter will continue to monitor this case and bring you any updates the moment they break. We owe it to Ziyah to keep looking, to keep asking questions, and to never accept silence as an answer. Thank you for staying with us through this entire story. Your time and your attention mean everything to the families of these victims. Don't forget to check out our other videos for more deep dives into the cases that the world tried to forget. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and we will see you in the next chapter.